August gun sales top 1.3 million, the CDC turns back to gun research, and an interview with John Correia of Active Self-Protection. That and more on this episode of the Weekly Reload
I made
Podcast.
the devil run. I gave him poison just for fun.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Stephen Gutowski. I'm the host of the Weekly Reload Podcast and the founder of thereeload.com. This week we have a number of big stories. I have my fellow contributing writer here, Jake Fogelman, who is one of our top writers at The Reload, here to discuss the news of the week before we get into our interview with John Correia from Active Self-Protection. We're trying out a new format here of how to present the actual news update portion. I think it'll go a little bit smoother. There'll be a little bit more energy to it, hopefully, and maybe a better listening experience for everyone. But I think we'll start with Jake's story about the CDC director coming out and making a new commitment to millions of dollars worth of funding for gun research. Jake, can you tell us a little bit more about what the director said this week?
Sure. So CDC Director Rochelle Walensky was on a exclusive interview with CNN, and she basically said that the CDC is going to make a concerted effort to dig into more gun violence research in light of the rising crime statistics. She was very forthright about acknowledging the controversy associated with that. She said she really wants to include gun owners as part of it, and just have a group effort in digging into gun violence research, which she claims has been woefully understudied over the last couple decades.
Right, yeah. And obviously gun owners have a fairly legitimate reason to be skeptical of her claims at this point. There is, in fact, a specific reason that the funding for CDC gun-related research was effectively cut off. I mean, technically, it was only removed for funds that would go towards promoting gun control. Now, this created an atmosphere that, opponents of the ban claim that it created an atmosphere where there just wasn't any willingness by the CDC to fund gun research. And so you saw a lot less of it, but certainly not. It didn't go away completely in that time period. And the problem was that prominent members of CDC leadership in the 1990s were actively talking about cutting off or going after the concept of gun ownership in America, trying to make it like cigarette smoking, where it's dirty and banned, was, I believe, the quote, or part of the quote, and which is something that I wrote about this week in a member's piece as well, talking about how the CDC needs to tread lightly in this area if they really do want cooperation from gun owners and don't just want to sow more dissension or more skepticism of the institution, which obviously is trying to deal with a global pandemic right now, which also, of course, raises questions about why the CDC director felt the need to do this interview at this time, especially when gun control organizations have been criticizing the president and the White House for not doing all of the initiatives that they had wanted them to. So you had that happen, and then you had the CDC director come out and make this proclamation. And obviously, it's fair for gun owners and gun rights activists to look at that situation and be very skeptical of what the CDC is actually going to do. But on that front, we do know already some of what they're putting this money towards, right?
Yeah, they were going to look at the root causes of gun violence, I think was their specific goal, addressing why people choose to take up arms and commit crimes with guns specifically. So as of yet, they're not wading into the overtly political waters that they did back in the 90s. She made it a point to really emphasize that they want to find the causes of gun violence rather than how guns play a role in other avenues of American life.
Yeah, although there is one study that's been funded by the CDC that could potentially lead to an outcome or, a conclusion that is very controversial and political. It has to do with studying local gun ownership rates and then comparing gun violence rates in those areas to other areas with different, quote unquote, gun safety policies, which oftentimes in that context means gun control laws. So we'll have to see how these studies actually turn out in the end. Certainly, many of them are about gun violence interruption type programs or understanding, like you said, the root causes of gun violence. So it's not impossible to see legitimate dispassionate research come out of this funding avenue. But again, as I wrote in the members only piece, it's not necessarily something that is probably going to get a lot of gun owners excited and make them feel comfortable with what the administration is doing here.
That's exactly right. And so, Stephen, you wrote a piece this week talking about the August gun sales that just came out. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. They just dropped the numbers this week. Actually came out very fast. Usually the FBI takes a couple days to process all the background checks and put out the numbers, and then the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which analyzes the numbers, is a trade group that represents gun businesses, gun retailers. It takes them a while to go through the coding on these background check data to figure out which ones are actually gun sales and which ones are things like gun carry permits, so that they can put together their report on how many guns were actually sold in the month. But for August, that it came out on the first day of September. So good job to everyone involved on the speed of that one, I guess. But the numbers are impressive. It's the second highest gun sales level that we've ever seen for August, second only to 2020. Now it is down significantly from 2020, about I believe it was 23%, but it still equates to 1.3 million guns sold just in the month of August to Americans. So it's quite a lot. It also represents the continuation of a new trend, a new normal for gun sales, which is basically the second best ever for 2021, second only to 2020. So you're seeing this plateau occur where, yes, the gun industry is no longer setting new records every month for gun sales, but they're just below those record numbers. They have not dipped down below 2019's numbers. In fact, 2021 has almost through August equaled the full year of 2019 gun sales. So they're still selling guns at an incredible rate. You've seen gun companies rake in huge profits. In fact, their profits are only accelerating in the first half of 2021 at Ruger and Winchester as two major examples of that. So while we're seeing sales slow down a little bit, the gun companies themselves have not slowed down at all. And I would expect that their stock prices are probably going to benefit from that in the short term at least. And this new level of gun sales settling out well above the 2016 to 2019 levels, and frankly, the 2012 to 2016 levels before that, it likely means that more Americans are buying more guns, which is good news for the gun rights movement and then, of course, for the gun companies. So we'd look to see how things are going to go from here, too, because we're actually coming up on the best season for gun sales. The fall tends to see higher gun sales than any other time during the year, outside of 2020, where there were so many other motivations, including COVID and the rioting and racial unrest, police relations, police brutality led a lot of new people to the gun stores at times where you would usually see a drop off in sales. March and June, we saw an increase. But this year has been closer to the traditional, high sales in spring and then a drop off in the summer. And then we will likely see much higher sales coming up here in the fall. as we go into hunting season and the holiday season where people buy guns for each other. Obviously, Black Friday tends to be the biggest gun sales day of the year, like with a lot of other products out there. But I think it'll be interesting to watch just how high 2021's gun sales numbers are going to get. And you're going to see as well as that positive effect on gun company bottom lines and their stock prices, you're very likely to see continued shortages as well of both guns and ammo moving forward, especially with the new ban from the administration on Russian imported ammunition.
Absolutely. And in your reporting, did you see anything that would indicate why we've seen such sustained levels of high sales? Obviously, you pointed to last year with the rioting and the pandemic. It spurred a lot of people to buy guns, but the pandemic has kind of waned. It's still around, obviously, but why do you think we still see the second highest gun buying month ever?
I think that's actually a really interesting question, because we've seen a lot of the motivating factors from 2020 decrease at the very least. You've seen COVID is obviously still around, and the Delta variant is obviously wreaking more havoc than I think anyone expected it to, where we're getting terrible levels of disease throughout the country now. But the initial shock of COVID has obviously worn off, and people are more used to dealing with it now. So that motivation to run out to the gun store to buy a gun is not the same, I would imagine, today as it was in March 2020. And then you've also seen the rioting from summer of 2020 dissipate as well. So a lot of those sort of unique motivating factors have gone away, but at the same time, you still have that political motivator. And the NSSF spokesperson, Mark Oliva, told me basically this exact thing, that President Joe Biden is pursuing a very aggressive gun control agenda, which would include all kinds of new bans on ownership of different kinds of guns, and in fact is pushing through several executive actions on things like pistol braces and ghost gun, so-called ghost gun kits, redefining the definition of what constitutes a firearm, things like that, which could have significant impact to millions of people. And that motivates people to buy guns. They are concerned that he'd be successful in getting what he wants, even though obviously Congress is fairly deadlocked on this issue and unlikely to produce new legislation. There are things that the president can do and has done, like again with the ammo ban, that drive people to want to buy guns just in case he's able to find some new way to get at the guns that they want to buy. I mean, the ammo ban really is a perfect example of that, because most people didn't expect that to happen. It wasn't like something that was talked about early on in his administration or before he became president as a real possibility. It was something that they found they could do, or at least found that they would like to try to do recently. And so that they put that into effect, and that's likely to drive up the sale of ammunition in the short term. So I think that's really the big motivator left is politics. And plus you saw a lot of new people coming into the sport last year. So those people are probably, some percentage of those people are probably buying more guns now and more ammunition. And that's led to sustained demand as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward, but I wouldn't expect the demand to crater anytime soon, that's for sure. But I do have another members only piece talking about this new trend, the new normal for gun sales over at The Reload, where if you join today, you actually will get not just access to those pieces we mentioned, the members only pieces, but you will get access to this podcast a day early. So make sure you head over to thereload.com and check us out. See what's on offer. Join the free newsletter if you haven't already. That'll give you some insight into the kinds of pieces that Jake and I are writing. And if you support what we're doing, we're 100% reader funded, independent publication. We rely on membership sales to make The Reload a thing that continues. So go ahead and sign up today. But next up, we've got John Correia from Active Self-Protection. We're going to talk to him. And then we have another new segment where I interview one of the Reload members themselves to see what they're all about, see what some of the people who do subscribe actually are like. We're hoping to continue that that sort of segment going forward here. So also, if you ever want to be on the podcast, feel free to email me, respond to one of the members' emails that goes out every Sunday, and we'll see if we can have you on. All right, we're here with John Correia from Active Self-Protection. John, why don't you introduce yourself to anyone who might not know who you are?
Well, hi, I'm John Correia from Active Self-Protection. Like you said, Active Self-Protection, if you know me from YouTube. I run 2 YouTube channels, the big one called Active Self-Protection, where every day people send me real-life surveillance videos of defensive encounters, armed robberies, carjackings, muggings, home invasions. And I do after-action reports on them for education. So every single day, 7 days a week, we post a new defensive encounter. 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We post badge cams as well, so people understand what law enforcement encounters are. Those serve a dual purpose for training law enforcement officers as well as training the general public. Second channel, Active Self-Protection Extra, not quite as big. Big channel has around 2.5 million subscribers. Second channel is a little smaller, Active Self-Protection Extra. We upload 8 videos a week there where we teach good, sane, sober, moral, prudent people self-defense. And we also do an instructor certification. We now have our own podcast. We do live in-person events, travel and teach all over the country. And I am kind of sort of known now as the John Madden of on-camera violence.
Is that because you also look a little bit like John Madden, or?
You know, I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I'll take it.
I'm just kidding. But no, I think I think that's actually a pretty good breakdown as far as like you run through these encounters in a way that like John Madden used to do with when you break down the plays on Monday Night Football. But, I think that you have one of the best YouTube channels out there when it comes to guns, and certainly one of the most interesting and verifiable maybe approaches to self-defense training because of the way that you guys handle that, and the classes you teach are based off of that sort of research. So that's the main reason why I wanted to have you on.
Yeah, thank you. I started the videos because I was, so I'm I'm a 15-year martial artist. I'm a master firearms instructor as well. I've got 1,100 hours or so in gun school. I love that. I got all kinds of certifications, all that stuff. But it started because I was in martial arts and studying with my son, and somebody sent me a video that I was like of a real knife attack, like a real one. And I was watching it on my BlackBerry. That'll tell you how old this is. And I was like, whoa. And I took it to my martial arts school and showed my teacher. And I was like, teacher, like professor, I don't know what to do here. And he was like, okay, well, let's workshop an answer to that kind of attack. And we worked in class for an hour and a half. And I felt like, not that I had mastered it, but that I at least had something for that kind of thing. And I walked off the mats going, wow, we actually used what happened to somebody in real life to inform our training. And that right there is evidence basis for training, rather than, well, this is some way someone might attack you. No, here's how we see somebody do it in real life. So then I just started posting them and seeing, here's an example, here's an example, here's an example. And after a while, we got 2,000 some odd videos on the big channel now. After a while, you start to see real patterns emerge. And you see things that both the defensive training community, the firearms community, the martial arts community, things that they absolutely love that we never see in real life, and other things that they don't really pay a lot of attention to, and yet we see all the time in real life. And so that just made us focus on what we were going to do. And that's why I call myself an evidence-based defensive trainer.
Yeah. And so what are some of your biggest takeaways in that regard? Like, what are some of the biggest myths in self-defense training out there? And what are some of the biggest real life things that you see in your work that don't get emphasized in self-defense training?
So the funny part is this one, I'm a gun school junkie and a firearms trainer, right? So like I want to get students in class. This is one of the ways that I get paid. And yet I'm going to probably anger some training junkie friends with this. I see real people use firearms as noisemakers, as a rattlesnake rattle successfully all the time. So when people say, why are you an absolutist, John, on the right to keep and bear arms? Shouldn't people have to have training? You know, the reality is I see untrained people use firearms and not hit a thing. I'm talking about they're basically doing an other guy's desk pop with the gun, and it successfully wards off bad guys. And now I don't think that's a good thing because obviously those bullets come to rest somewhere and that can endanger someone. But it almost never actually causes any harm, and yet it causes bad guys to scatter. And so when I say, do I wish all people would get trained? Absolutely, so that they have the best chance of immediately ending the threat. But you know what? Untrained people use guns all the time too, and they use them very successfully whether they hit anything or not. So carry your gun.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that actually comes up, I think, fairly regularly in debates over permitless carry or constitutional carry.
Oh, Texas just got it.
Yeah, you see that a lot, and that was an issue in Texas specifically, where you had some, concealed carry trainers arguing that they shouldn't remove the requirement for a permit because then you'd have untrained people carrying a gun.
This is exactly the argument they made in Arizona. So Arizona passed constitutional carry in 2009, went into effect in July of 2010. And the two arguments from the one argument from the non-gun crowd is there will be blood on the highways, right? That people were going to have gunfights in Walmart parking lots. That never materialized. The other big opposition was from firearms trainers, and particularly CCW trainers, who were like, no, this is what keeps people safe, which of course I said that's hogwash, right? I think that the funny part in Arizona, at least, is that they cut a bunch of the DPS staff who was processing CCW permits when constitutional carry was enacted, thinking nobody's going to need a permit, nobody wants a permit anymore. And the permit numbers actually went up after constitutional carry because, number one, you get reciprocity. Number two, I think most people go, yeah, but I still want that education.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
yeah, certainly. And, and obviously, like you said earlier, I don't think anyone out there advocates, even those who want to see the repeal of permit requirements for gun carry. I don't think anyone advocates that you shouldn't get training. You shouldn't be responsible. Obviously, you offer training directly to people, so you're clearly not of the mindset that people shouldn't get training or be responsible for themselves.
I just don't think the government bureaucracy should oversee that, and the government almost never does a good job of establishing standards and maintaining them. So it's the same thing that I tell people, listen, should you get training on responsibly practicing your right to free worship? Yeah, I think you should. Do I want the government overseeing and mandating that? Oh, sweet Lord, no. Of course I do. Should my journalist friends get good training to be responsible journalists? Absolutely. Should the federal government, or any government for that matter, oversee the licensure of journalists and enact training standards? Heck no, they shouldn't.
No.
So those aren't the same things.
No, they should not. Yes, I'm certainly in agreement with you there. And I frankly, I think a lot of journalists would view Second Amendment restrictions differently if they ever thought to compare it to First Amendment restrictions. Which is a lens that I commonly view this issue through personally. But yeah, certainly one of the things that interests me about active self-protection, and especially the success of the main channel on YouTube, is your approach is basically entirely educational. The videos are not meant for entertainment, and in fact, many of them are rather hard to watch, obviously, because they involve real world violence. But what would you attribute your success with growing that channel to, when most popular gun channels on YouTube are really just straight up entertainment? Something like Demolition Ranch or any number of these of other channels that feature, just different wacky things being done with guns. It's a lot of fun to watch, certainly, but very different from what you're doing.
It really is. I mean, I don't really consider the main active self-protection channel a gun channel. It is an education channel. So I say on YouTube, you can do two things. You can either educate or you can entertain. It's best if you do both. I think that because no one else was doing what I was doing when I started doing it, I really created a market segment with the narrated, after action reports. So because of that, I think I kind of have the market cornered there. I'm kind of a monopoly. It's a big internet, right? I mean, anybody can do that. I've heard people say this to me. Well, John, anyone can do what you do. And my usual response to that is, please, by all means, go for it. A couple of others have tried, and I think that the secret sauce of the Active Self-Protection channel is not the on-camera violence. Certainly, I have some viewers who just like violence snuff, that exists. But I think it's my approach to self-defense. I try to really encourage good, sane, sober, moral prudence in people, and it's an evidence base, but it's also a moral bent to be the good person and to give good practical advice. I don't beat the drum for any particular tactic or technique, though when I see things that work all the time, I go, this is a good technique. You want to use that technique if you're in that spot because it works, and you watch it work here or you watch it don't work here, and that's why we don't do that. But I think the other part of that is I don't beat a political drum at all on ASP. I believe the Second Amendment is a civil right. It's for all people, and it should be apolitical. And so I don't force team, and I don't bundle ideas. And I think that that's also a big selling point. It is kind of funny. A lot of people think they understand and know my political positions and my understanding of the world. They probably know less than they think in reality. And I will say this, and I'll beat this drum till the day is done. Self-defense is a human right. And I don't care if all you and I have in common is a life to defend. You have the right to defend your life. And if somebody threatens it, I'm on your side.
Yeah, certainly that's another aspect I wanted to talk about with your approach to how you guys run the business over there as this, very apolitical, big tent, I guess you could say, sort of approach, which is pretty unique. I mean, I suppose like a lot of the big entertainment side gun channels, like Demolition Ranch again, they're not necessarily very political either, but I think you guys go out of your way to cultivate a community that is more about the free exchange of thought, and that you try in my experience, watching you guys on Facebook or on YouTube, you try to eliminate sort of trolling and obviously
anything. Man, if only you saw the number of people we banned for their idiocy, man. Holy Moses.
Yeah. So why do you take that approach, and why do you think it works?
Well, I think that it's already a polarized enough issue in terms of the right to keep and bear arms. And, we're talking about real violence here. And so people's lives are at stake. It's already serious enough. We don't need to add things like racism and misogyny. We don't need to add things like bundling political positions. Everybody right now has a political position on COVID. ASP has no position on that, because no matter what your position is on that, so your right to self-defense and your need to protect yourself exists. And so I didn't do an awful lot of coverage of riots in terms of riot survival. My number one thing is don't get involved in a riot, right? And with the few that we've seen, here's a few techniques to get the heck out of there, but I'm not going to teach you how to have a clubs and bats and sticks fight with the other side, Yeah. I'm just not. The answer is run like heck. And I think we've done that because so my background is education, right? So I was a vocational pastor for 14 years, and I taught college and graduate school for 9. And so as a college educator, it's not all that different than a journalist, right? As a college educator, you are really trying not to instill your values and ideas. You're trying to teach students not what to think, but how to think. And you're trying to expose them to ideas, a broad swath of ideas. So then that way, that's education, not indoctrination. And I take that seriously, like I know you do as a journalist. And so in that educational vein, I'm not trying to indoctrinate, although I'll say, I think the evidence points towards a robust right to keep and bear arms, which is why I'm for that. And all the secondary issues are what they are, and I think that good people who are good, sane, sober, moral, prudent people can disagree about a lot. And so I want to help all the folks who want to protect themselves and their loved ones. But people can feel very alienated if they get force teamed on other issues. And that goes a lot of different ways. So, I mean, I've got folks from the far right-wing fundamentalist Christian homeschooling, like as far right as you could possibly imagine, all the way over to far lefties, who are, way big Black Lives Matter supporters. And I go, listen, we all have the right to keep and bear arms, and I'll sit and have dinner with any of you. And personally, honestly, if I'm allowed to speak freely from my own personal convictions on this, I think that was how Jesus lived his life. He had disciples who were both Levi the tax collector and Simon the zealot, who's rabidly anti-Rome. And so if Jesus could have those guys among his disciples, then I can do that in my business.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's another area where we share some similarity. Obviously, I was brought up in the church and went to Christian school and evangelical Christian, and I take the same things from my experience in Christianity that you do in this regard, and often the same approach in how I run my business, The Reload. Right? I mean, I think a lot of what you guys are doing gives me the confidence that I can do something similar with The Reload and trying to make it something more sober and serious and less alienating for people. But I do think that swims upstream a bit in the gun culture, especially online. But even, the mass gun culture, especially when it comes to gun rights, you see a lot of groups out there, whether it's, the NRA or Gun Owners of America or whoever, trying to, and this is to certain degrees, some groups are less committed to this than others, but it's often they're trying to sell you an entire identity, rather than a single, principle dealing with gun rights. And that's become more of a trend, and it's not limited to the gun area. It's not. You see this with the ACLU as well, as I've talked about in the past. Which are supposed to be about civil liberties, protecting civil liberties, but really they've become more of a progressive liberal identity group that is this is started on the left with, or at least was talked about on the left prominently with intersectionality, where you're supposed to not just believe in abortion rights or gun control, but you're supposed to combine those two separate issues, and then combine those with all of the other issues that the left, that American liberalism holds dear. And now you're seeing a lot of that on the right as well. Not that that's new, but it seems to be increasingly polarized, and this makes its way into movements as well, with how closely they associate with the political party that their issue is favored by. So the NRA, for instance, obviously has endorsed fewer and fewer Democrats over the years, and more Republicans, to the point where it was, basically indistinguishable from the Trump campaign in 2016 and 2020, which meant embracing quite a lot of ideas, and even beyond like the political stuff, like getting into NRA country or something like that, where it's more about appealing to a certain demographic or a certain identity group, rather than anyone who might agree with the mission to defend gun rights, or in my case to report on gun issues, or in your case to offer self-defense training. So I do think there's a bit of swimming upstream there. Is that how you see it as well? Am I being too pessimistic on it in regards to the overall culture?
What's that colloquialism that in matters of preference swim with the current, in matters of principle stand like a rock. Is it swimming upstream? I do think some, but I also think, listen, my little libertarian heart says, you do you, boo. And I'm okay. If you want to be full right side, MAGA hat wearing Trump folk, okay, that's fine. If that's what you believe in, great. I also have friends who are part of liberal gun owners. Laura Smith, the president of liberal gun owners, is a friend, and I've had dinner with her. And Sarah Hauptman, Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, who is definitely politically left of center, a friend of mine. I have done events for armed equality, and people have asked me, John, would you train a Muslim? Not only would I have, and I would. I don't make those kind of things. And it is a little countercultural, but the other side of it is, when something like that, the NRA went full in on the culture war, I looked at that and said, man, look at all these people that we are, that we want a robust right to keep and bear arms. We're not going to keep that by forced teaming. We're just not. We have to be willing to big tent it a little bit. And I joke as a lowercase L libertarian. I'm more kind of live and let live, because libertarians tend to be kooky and weird. And, I like libertarianism, but I pretty much hate libertarians. But we joke, for you folks on the right, you got to accept the gays in the weed, and for you folks on the left, you got to accept free enterprise and guns, and like we can live together and it'll be fine. So I do think it's a little bit, but man, you'd be surprised too, Stephen. I get, for every person who says, that I'm not right wing enough, I get 10 people who say, man, thank you for making your channel a place that I feel welcome. We show these videos literally all over the world. So YouTube is a worldwide entity. And so I'm speaking not just to Americans, I'm speaking to the world. And so from that perspective, I also want people all around the world to see an example of an American who is a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent person who they can relate to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to, sometimes talking about this stuff, or like holding yourself up as like a counterculture, or like whatever, is a bit, definitely can come across as too dramatic. Or,
I think that
but I think it's true to some degree.
So I lead my business now. We have something over 3 million total social following. So I'm an influencer, and those persons, I hate that phrase, by the way. I'm a trusted advisor. I was again a vocational pastor for 14 years, worked in management, was in the military. So I've been doing leadership training since I was young, in reality. And the job of a leader is to lead. And leadership is not bullying. Leadership is not telling people what they have to do. It is instead, I think, I love that the Seth Godin idea of opening people's minds to what could be and influencing, of giving this idea of saying, okay, leaders have to be willing to provide an example that people want to follow. And so that's what my goal is just to not be that guy that goes, well, you have to do this thing and get exactly like me, but to say, how about if we thought this way? Could we be compassionate? Could we be caring? Can we understand everyone? And that's that paraphrase of Aristotle, right? It's the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain an idea without accepting it. And yeah, that's a paraphrase. It's not an actual quote, but to do that, I think takes is what we're called to do. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that the calculation that is at play with how some groups will try to, or publications or YouTube channels, it's not just about, the NRA or what any of these gun groups. There's this, you see this across the board on at gun publications and at, gun channels on YouTube as well. Like, it's a common tactic to appeal to your core audience's sense of identity, whether or not that has anything to do with the issue of gun rights.
Well, particularly because that's how they fundraise, right? In organizations that whether that's, hey, we have to sell a product, so we're a for-profit company, or we have to get donations because we're a nonprofit like the NRA, appealing to your core base makes you money. Sure. And then we live in a time that flying the tribal flag and the tribal purity flag says, everyone has to get like me, and we support each other. And quite frankly, as evangelical Christians, we've been doing a very a significant job of this since the moral majority in the 70s. I don't find that helpful. I find much more use in a book like James Davison Hunter's To Change the World, where we build dense networks that reach beyond our borders and invite people. We're bridge builders, not gatekeepers. So it does cost me money. I'll tell you that. It costs me crazy money not to appeal to the base. I definitely understand as a YouTuber, when you make videos that appeal to the base, they share them, they watch them, they applaud them, they leave you approbation. You make money on that because advertisers take out on that stuff. I joke on my big channel, if I wanted to really grow it, I would never show a negative outcome. I would never show a good person getting mugged. I would never show somebody getting hurt. I would just show nothing but good guy shoots bad guy. I would just do that again and again. Yeah. And I'd make way more money.
You think so? I mean, this is where I guess the rub is. Like, that is what a lot of people have decided is the case. But to me, I wonder if, well, for one, everyone's decided that's the case, so everyone's doing that already. So there's plenty of competition for people, if you just want to have your opinions screamed back in your face, right, without any challenge whatsoever. And then two, like, at some point you're going to alienate not only people who don't agree with your point of view, but also like people who agree with you, but aren't, incredulous.
Yeah, they don't want to be associated with all the other stuff.
Well, and just don't want to be like fed BS, or at least like manipulated, basically, that they want to hear the full story. I think at some point you turn those people off too. And so you've cut out, a large percentage of people from the group that you could ever reach with your message or your business or your product.
Well, I definitely agree with you. So, I think it's a short-term versus a long game focus. When you play long ball, you're always looking at, this is no different than business, Steven. You see so many companies that the senior leadership will do something that's actually deleterious to the company in order to boost their quarterly, so that their stock price goes up, and as they sell or whatever, they make more money based on that. And their end of year bonuses are based on that rather than the overall health of the company. And the long-term success of the company. So, but okay, you'll make that short-term money, but long-term, you're not setting yourself up for health. I prefer to play the long game.
Right, because like in your example, right, like, yeah, I'm sure that for those of your audience who are watching because they have an ideological investment into the idea of armed self-defense, right? Someone like myself, perhaps, right? And there's plenty of people who do, millions and millions of people. It would be easier to sell them a video that's just about, somebody was successful in defending themselves.
Yep.
And they're much more likely to share a video like that, perhaps, than a video where you see the consequences of somebody who failed, even if they did try. Which is, real life. You're never going to have 100% success rate with anything. And, but at the same time, if you did that strategy, right, if you just posted those videos all the time and never talked about the downsides or the potential risks involved with armed self-defense, or, not even just armed self-defense, but all sorts of things, then eventually people, there would be a lot of people who your reputation will become somebody who's not truthful, that you only talk about the positive side of things. The same thing with me at the Reload, right? If I only ever posted about the times when the gun rights side wins a court case or passes a law that gun rights advocates like, sure, I could get people maybe to share that stuff more often. Although, even then, I don't. I just think that leaving out all the other stuff, the times when they lose court cases or a law passes that they didn't want to pass, like, eventually people will realize that that's what I'm doing, and won't take me seriously anymore.
I agree.
Beyond this certain core of people who would, it's the old Lincoln saying, right? You can fool some of the people all the time, and you can fool all of
All
the
the people
people
some
some
of
of
the
the
time.
time, but you can't fool all the people all the time.
Right.
And that's, I think, the dilemma that you get into with a lot of partisan, like heavily polarized or heavily ideological media motivations, or like outlets that focus on putting forth a heavily partisan point of view. Is like, yes, you can still have, you will still be able to get a significant number of people. You probably still run a business off of just those people. Clearly you can. The people do it all the time. It's just that the potential reach of that business is much smaller. Now, I think, this is where the calculation comes in, is like, it seems like groups like the ACLU or the NRA or media outlets that have catered heavily towards one political ideology or another, they've made a calculation that they can get more money out of that core group of people than they
Right.
can out of that broader group of people, by operating the way that they do. But my question is whether or not that's actually true in the long term. And it's like, I look at places like ASP, and it, to me, stands out as an example of somewhere that can
Well,
have much more success doing things the way that you do it in the long term.
I think so. And I think, also what's your end goal, right? Like, so a lot of people that own a business, well, what's the purpose of your business? The purpose of your business is to make money so that you can feed your family and do your life. I didn't start ASP with that in mind. I started ASP to educate people. It was totally a side gig, just a passion project that then started making a little bit of money, and I ended up taking it full time. But that wasn't, it was never supposed to be a business that supported my family. And so when your goal is education, or when your goal is information and knowledge transfer, well, then as long as you stay true to the mission, then you're going to take that broader perspective, in my opinion. And with that in mind, I think if you do that, then you'll be taken care of. It's like any good business, right? Any good business, if your focus is on we got to make money, you're going to struggle, in my opinion. You're going to be limiting. If instead it's no, we're here to make a product that's really good for people. And if we make a great product and put it out there in the market and market it well, then we'll do okay.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, I don't know. I'm at the place now where I've got 14 employees that get paid every month. So I think we're doing okay.
Right. And there's not a lot of YouTube channels that have that, frankly, even the successful ones.
I would guess there's something on the order of 5,000 to 7,000 YouTubers in America who make a full-time living at it. There's probably that many, tops would be my guess here in the US. So, there's only 9,000 or 10,000 channels worldwide that have over 1 million subscribers. So, right. Having that is a big stewardship, in my opinion, and it makes me responsible for using it well.
Certainly. And most of those YouTubers who make a living at it also don't have like an actual staff built around them either. They can't necessarily, they can support themselves and maybe even, do quite well at that point. But you found a way with your approach that lets you not only support yourself, but an entire company.
Well, and I can't, I have a staff because I could never do the work.
Sure.
We put out 18 videos a week. I could never do that on my own. I don't have the number of hours in the day that would let me do that. We have a training arm. We run an instructor certification. We have live events. Nope.
Right.
Not a chance. So I have to have those folks. Their input is non-negotiable. So yeah.
I just think it shows that your approach is working for sure.
I think there's evidence to that point. Yeah.
And speaking of which, you have a new podcast.
We do. We just started our podcast.
Yes, that I'm actually part of.
Yes, I'm excited to have you on it too.
Yeah, it's great. It's just sort of a partnership. I'm not getting paid or anything, but it's I think it's wonderful to have to be able to bring your audience some of the reporting that we're doing over at the Reload.
I'm excited to have you. I think so. So the purpose of the podcast, we decided. I'm personally not a huge podcast listener. I'm usually making YouTube videos, right? But I know a lot of people are. People love that long form content. And so my good friend, Mike Wilver, is literally my oldest friend. I've known him for 20 years or more. And Mike just retired from federal service, and he was an interrogator, basically, which is really the same word as interviewer, right? And so there's a lot of podcasts out there about gun training, and there's trainers talking to trainers. Those are a dime a dozen. There's bunches of those.
Yep.
But there's nobody out there doing interviews of real life people who've been in real life defensive encounters. And those folks are very hard to come by, in fact. But I, of course, have this built-in audience that's what they send me their videos now. I get emails every week of people. This was me. And maybe not every week, but pretty regular.
Yeah.
And I get emails from people. John, you saved my life. Whoa. I didn't save your life. You saved your life. Tell me what happened. And so letting those folks tell those stories and hearing the stories, of course, vetting them, right? Making sure that it's not somebody that's just blowing wind. But I find that I'm like, man, those are compelling stories of real life. And so we decided to start a podcast. And so far it's, I'm willing to invest in it. And I'm excited for it. We just launched our 3rd episode. So it's a baby right now, but we've got some great episodes coming up of real people involved in some real hairy stuff. And I think having you on there with the latest on here's what's going on in the Second Amendment world and with firearms stuff, I think is also a great way for people to get that. So I'm excited to start it and bring it to the market.
Yeah, no, I think it's gone really well so far. I'm the same as you in that, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts myself. But I put on the 2nd episode. So you're on their very first episode, obviously. Skip that one because, who wants to
hear me? I get it.
But, just kidding. But listening to that 2nd episode, I put it on to, let's see how my segment went, I don't know. But obviously, as I started to listen to the interview of the person who had survived a self-defense encounter, like, it just became so engrossing that I couldn't stop listening to it. And so I listened to the entire hour-long podcast, even though I didn't intended just to see how I sounded on there, just because the content was so good. The interview was so good and the story was so compelling that I couldn't stop listening to it. And
I think doubly so.
People say that about stuff, but it's true.
I think doubly so when you recognize that so is James Guthrie, and his self-defense encounter we narrated, and it's on the main channel. So you can see it, and this is what happened, and then you can hear about it from the first person perspective, and that just amplifies the learning experience and makes it so much more real. And so I really think it's unique, and I'm super excited about it. And Mike does a great job of interviewing.
Oh, absolutely. He's done an amazing job so far, especially for someone just starting out with interviewing. Like, he's got a knack for it for sure. And I think that it's going to be a big podcast in my, that's what I would take away from it, is like, I listen to the whole thing, and I don't listen to a lot of podcasts other than, of course, this one, which everyone should listen to every week. But that really hooked me. And so, like, I think that's going to be a big deal.
From your lips to
no
God's
one else
ears,
doing something like that. Yeah.
Joe Rogan, here we come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so how can people find more of you, more of Active Self-Protection? How can they sign up for like a class or something like that if they want to get involved?
So obviously you can find us on YouTube, right? 2 big channels, Active Self-Protection or Active Self-Protection Extra. Find us there, 18 videos a week to help you be a better self-defender. We have a Facebook page. I have an Instagram. I suck at Twitter. I do have a Twitter, but I'm terrible at it. Don't follow me on Twitter. Just no. You find us there. The podcast is on all the major platforms now. So Apple, Spotify, all those. If you want to find out where we're going to be and when, you go on our website, activeselfprotection.com. We have our training schedule up there. Obviously, the current pandemic has wrecked everything. It was supposed to be tomorrow, in fact, we were supposed to be in Houston, and that got canceled. And our next big training event is our national conference, which is a charity event, 3 days of training at the end of September in Manhattan, Kansas, all to benefit the Flint Hills Foster Teen Camp. You can find out all about that on our website as well. So, and that lists where we'll be when we're doing live stuff and where you can find us.
And I highly recommend it. I actually have to make it out to one of these trainings because I really want to try the class.
Come on, man! Amazing. Last weekend in September.
We're gonna have to set something up for sure. And maybe I'll write about it for the reload too. That could be interesting for people, I think. But all right, well, we really appreciate you coming on and talking with us, giving us some of your time so the audience can better understand what you guys are doing over there. I thought it was really interesting, some of the stuff that you do differently from everyone else. We actually have an interview with one of the Reload members coming up after this, so make sure you guys stick around to hear that. As a new segment we're going to try out, and
I am a Reload member too, so you got two interviews.
There you go. Hey, hey, look, if John Correia is a member, I mean, you guys should all be members too.
But, I get the email, Ben. I'm a follower.
Hey, we appreciate the support. Anything we can get. It's independent, reader-funded organization here. So we are grateful for anyone who's willing to help keep us going. But thank you for coming on, and we will hopefully talk to you again real soon.
Thanks so much for having me, Stephen.
All right, I'm here with member Cal Davis. We're doing a new segment on the podcast where we talk to some of the Reload members and get a little insight into who's subscribing and why and what they're like. And thanks for joining us, Cal. Can you just tell people a little bit about yourself?
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, my name is Cal Davis. I am happy to be in the Reload community. Enjoyed getting the emails and the voice of reason, a little bit of independent voice of reason that's not out there. Of course, firearms enthusiast, NRA instructor, business owner, and family man, and common sense enthusiast. And so part of that, all of those things, I think, would probably resonate with your listeners, readers rather. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I imagine a lot of our readers are probably like you, in the sense that they own guns, they like guns, maybe they work in the industry in some way, but they're looking for maybe a little bit more original reporting, a little more of a calm, sober demeanor. Is that kind of what drew you to subscribe?
Absolutely. Again, I joked about the common sense approach, but it's a matter of, being a responsible, gun owner, which involves not only, safely owning a gun, but responsibly representing, other gun owners. And
sure.
Yeah, a calm, reasonable, approach to owning guns. Like has been said 100 times, gun ownership is our right, but by the same token, our responsibility. And so, that's kind of where I stand on that, and I like to support anybody that has that same view, where it's a calm, responsible ownership and not a exaggeration or any of the other media outlets that tend to overdo things.
Yeah, or just be completely misinformed about guns. I think it's a common problem, right?
Well, yeah, those are the easy ones, right? Anybody that, we all know about our 50-round AK clips that go into our Glocks and those types of things. Those are the easy pickings, but sometimes the more subtle ones are just as damaging because they're even a little more believable from, some of the people that just know a little bit. In my experience with my business, we deal with a lot of new gun owners or people that have never owned a gun and are thinking about owning a gun. And it's amazing the information that gets to them, or how little accurate information gets to them. And so, like you take, a calm, reasonable approach, common sense and just facts, it goes a long way to the public that aren't even gun owners yet.
Right. And so how did you get into gun ownership? What was it? Have you always been a gun owner? Did you grow up around guns? What was it for you?
I did. I had the benefit of growing up. My father always had, a firearm, for he had a 16 gauge bolt action shotgun, which was the first, which isn't that common.
No.
So that'll
Very
wake
cool.
you up as a 10-year-old. And so we did. We had the fortune of that. We had a place to shoot and just grew up with that as a safety, very safety conscious, but always grew up shooting, little 22 rifles and on throughout. Was able to, when I got older, then, purchase more guns and enjoy the shooting sports, from sporting clays to a little bit of precision shooting at distance. We have the opportunity to shoot out at distance and had some of that, and then some of the pistol. I'm an NRA pistol, firearms instructor, and do that, as well.
Me too.
Yeah, and so it was great. It's even though you think you know a lot, you grow up around guns, you own guns, and even to the point of teaching my son, the how to shoot and the safety and that type of thing. It's great to learn from other instructors. So taking the class and then teaching, learning how to teach, you get the different opinions, and it's great, to be part of a community because you don't know what you don't know, and it's been that NRA class was the instructor class specifically was excellent. And again, good instructor, good information. So that's kind of my background. I am in a business now, like I said, not commercial, but we do a virtual range, and so that is a great opportunity to. Our motto is responsible gun ownership, and it's more of an education piece, and so we pride ourselves on being a training facility first. And so that's where we've taken kind of that NRA safety stance in the education piece, and it's really low barrier to entry. There's no real guns, so it's not scary or intimidating for somebody that's trying to figure out and get some answers or see what shooting sports are all about.
Wow, that's interesting. So what's the name of the business? And you say you get a lot of first time gun owners coming through there. What's that experience been like?
Yeah, so the name is Engage Virtual Range. It's a virtual range, no headgear. It's just sim guns, like a SIRT pistol, other resetting triggers, and then some CO2 to simulate recoil. And then you're shooting at a screen that has an image, and the laser, reads that and then comes back. A golf simulator, but for firearms is kind of the short elevator speech. New owners, there's a lot of people went out and bought a gun and didn't know what to do with that gun, didn't even know how to bring it home safely. It's sitting locked in a box somewhere. And so they are afraid to take it out and shoot it. They don't know where to shoot it. They don't know how to shoot it. They don't know anything about the rules. Here in Ohio, different rules. A lot of people thought about signing up for our CCW course, which is a state course to be able to carry with the intent of learning how to shoot or learning about guns. And it's really not the right format. So we had a lot of people that came to us before that. And we did a class, intro to gun ownership. And, it's why do you want to own a gun? Why did you buy, a 22 pistol? What is your why? Do you want to teach your son how to shoot, your daughter how to shoot? Do you want to protect your home? Do you want to protect yourself out in public? And then trying to match that up, what makes sense for you. And as part of that class, we give them a chance to just do some shooting with just our inert pistols and the CO2 recoil. And we got a great feedback. People really appreciate the chance to come out in an environment like that, get some solid information, nothing, pushed one way or the other, and then actually, shoot and see what it's like to shoot even a sim gun. And several people were, after taking that course, decided that they weren't ready for gun ownership, which is great. They come back, get more comfortable, figure out what they really want, what they don't want. And then a lot of people took that and then went and got their CCW and then came to us afterwards for some situational training to practice, to really learn, to get more proficient with safe firearm handling and that type of thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially right now with the ammo shortage. I imagine you're probably seeing a lot of people you might not otherwise see with the dry fire exercises saving on ammo. So that's this is really fascinating business model. This not sponsored. Maybe we should have you on as bring you guys on as a sponsor. But I do think that's a really, really fascinating new. Is not that obviously CERT training and dry fire training has been around for a long time, but these sort of simulator style facilities that like what you're running are relatively new. The last decade or so, you've seen more of them pop up around the country, and I would imagine that's only going to accelerate from here. But we really appreciate you coming on to have a quick chat and give us some insight from one of the Reload readers, one of the members. If you guys want to be a member, you can join today over at thereload.com, but we're planning to do this segment more in the future. So really appreciate you coming on, Cal, and hope to hear from more Reload members real soon on the podcast. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, hey, that was a fun segment. I think we're going to do that more often. I enjoyed talking with the actual Reload members, and I think we'll probably try to have more people on in the future. So make sure you get your membership so you can be one of them potentially. But I think that's it for this week's episode of the Weekly Reload podcast. I'm your host, Steven Gutowski, and I will see you again next week.
I made the devil run. I gave him poison just for fun. I had one friend, now there's none. I made the devil run. I broke so many bones, but none of them were ever my own.